Dr. Patton.
Good afternoon. So I'm a journalist, author, historian, and child advocate, but I am also a descendant of lynching victims. My adoptive mother's grandfather was lynched in Mississippi in the 1920s. My biological mother's father was hogtied, beaten, and killed by white men in Kearney, New Jersey in 1969. So both families have lived in the echoes of this loss and trauma and injustice for decades. I've spent the last decade studying one of the country's most deliberately ignored atrocities, which is the lynching of Black children and teenagers. I want to say just a few of those names. An enslaved boy named Frederick, age 13, Mary Wallace, female, age 17, Edward Costley, age 19, Medford Walters, age 18, Howard Cooper, age 15, Fred Goings, identified only as a young Negro, which usually meant a child, Dennis Domerfield, age 16, Garfield King, age 18, John Berry, age 16, John Myers, age 19, Wiley Kirk, age 18, Carol Gibson, age 18, Oddie Simmons, age 19, Alfred Sims, age 19, John Lampkin, age 19, Weldon Jones Jr., age 18, Leonard Shockey, age 17. These are some of the names of young people who were lynched in the state of Maryland between 1861 and 1959. There was also Judah, a 14-year-old girl who in 1834 became the youngest female publicly hanged in the United States. Judah was enslaved at the Salubria plantation in what is now Oxon Hill, Maryland. She was accused of setting fire to her enslaver's home at age 10. Judah was gangsta. She was also accused of killing his 3 children by poison 2 years apart. Tried, convicted, and sentenced to death, she was marched to the gallows before a cheering public, forced to pray for forgiveness from the very people who had owned her body. And when the state executed her, it wasn't just a killing, it was a financial transaction. As required by Maryland law at the time, the state paid her enslaver, the former state senator, Dr. John H. Bain, $250 for the loss of his property. Judah's story is not a footnote in Maryland history. It's a foundational truth. Her execution set a precedent. And the names that I just read aloud are part of the legacy she never got to escape. These lynchings were not just about punishing children. They were about preserving a system, about reassuring society that even Black youth could be extinguished to maintain white order. Despite more than a century of scholarship on lynching, Black children have largely been left out of the story. They're often given passing mention, if any mention at all. Their ages go unrecorded. Their names are missing from databases. Their murders are written off or forgotten altogether when they were, in fact, deliberate strategic acts of racial terror meant to erase Black futures before they began. And this erasure is not just academic. It's moral, it's structural. It distorts our understanding of what lynching was, who it harmed, and why it continues in new forms. When we fail to center Black children in the narrative of racial terror, we miss the entire point of white supremacy. Because Black children were not just collateral, they were the target. Their very existence represented a threat, not because they had done anything wrong, but because they symbolized a future that could not be controlled. A future in which Black brilliance might rise, Black families might flourish, Black freedom might fully take root. Lynching was never just about punishment, it was about control in a form of intergenerational psychological warfare. The murder of a Black child sent a message, sent multiple messages to parents: you cannot protect your children; to siblings, this could be you; to the community, your future is ours to erase. And the media helped send the messages. The press did not merely report on lynchings, it shaped how Americans understood them. Through tone, language, silence, and spectacle, the press engineered a narrative that normalized the destruction of Black children. Based on my research, here are just 8 core strategies the media used to dehumanize and disappear lynching victims. Number 1, through headline language. So headlines were often sensational, dehumanizing, and racist. Headlines like, "Negro is lynched," Negro lynched in Maryland. Kill Negro protesting hunger pay. Headlines like these center identity instead of personhood. The word Negro is typically in all caps, aggressively racialized, while white people, even when accused of crimes, are rarely labeled racially. Often Negro is paired with lynched or killed with no context, reducing murder to a headline formula. Number two, the anonymity of the victims. Most articles omit the victim's name entirely or mention it once and never again. One that I encountered described the victim only as half Negro, half Indian, removing identity, community, and humanity. This turns people into types, not individuals, disposable and forgettable. Number three, emphasis on the alleged crime without evidence. The supposed offense, typically an accusation involving a white woman, is often presented as fact. Phrases like "for cutting the white lady" or "for assaulting a white woman" appear without legal proceedings, defense, or evidence. No presumption of innocence, not even for children. Number four, sympathetic or heroic framing of the mob. The crowd is described as enraged, jeering, avenging, never as lawless or brutal. Even when black victims were shot to pieces, burned, castrated, hacked to pieces, or their body parts were scavenged and sold as keepsakes. When white accusers lied, there was never any follow-up or investigation. In fact, the mob is often portrayed as a civic body. They're called citizens, restoring order, acting before the courts could. Some articles even imply that lynchings were preferable to due process. Number five, excusing or minimizing white violence. In one article, a black male protesting starvation wages is killed by the, quote, son of the boss, a phrase that humanizes the killer and reduces the protester to an agitator. Another says a lynching, quote, didn't receive much attention, implying the murder of a black person was just an ordinary event. Number six, juxtaposition with normalcy of white civic life. Lynchings were reported alongside ads for land, holiday gifts, or society columns, suggesting they were no more disruptive than a sale at the general store. This normalization folded Black death into the rhythm of white life. Number seven, a complete absence of the Black community's grief. There is no mention of mourning, no mothers crying, no siblings traumatized, no mention of schools, churches, or the long shadow of grief. The emotional and cultural damage is completely erased. And number eight, there's no follow-up, no justice. Not one article in white media indicates that anyone was arrested or tried for the lynching. Some even note that state officials declined to intervene. The message is this: these killings were not crimes, they were customs. So where is the analysis of white mobs, of white rage, of mobs that lynched and went to church the next morning? These newspapers were not passive messengers. They were architects of erasure. They wrote Black children into the public imagination as monsters. They erased their names. They justified their murders. And they reassured white readers that the social order had been preserved. This was not journalism. This was narrative warfare. This is why lynching has endured in American life, not only as a method of violence, but as a cultural script. It lives on in the criminalization of Black children by police, in debates about whether unarmed Black children deserve to die, in school suspensions, in economic divestment, in how their stories are told or not told by the media today. This is how the trauma of lynching continues. So if this commission is truly committed to truth and reconciliation, then the truth must include the children. It must start with them. It must center them. They are the foundational starting point. Black childhood is the axis upon which these forms of white racial violence and sadism turned. This country lynched babies. It lynched toddlers. It lynched 13-year-olds and 17-year-olds. It lynched the unborn. On record, I have 10 unborn Black children who were victims of lynching. And it did so with intention, with complicity, and with the help of the press. The young lynching victims in Maryland were seen as extensions of Black defiance, Black resistance, and Black futurity. And that terrified the people who needed Blackness to mean subhuman and to remain marginalized. The media played a central role in constructing that media. White newspapers, far from being neutral observers, were accomplices. They deliberately framed these children as threats, using the language of monstrosity and menace to strip them of their innocence. This was narrative violence, a kind of premeditated storytelling that made child murder seem not only acceptable, but righteous. The message was clear. If black children could be framed as dangerous, then white society could imagine itself as endangered. And in that fantasy, lynching became self-defense. The consequences of this framing were catastrophic, not just for the children, but for the families and communities left behind. Lynching was not just a spectacle of death, it was a sustained campaign of psychological warfare. It told black communities, you have no sanctuary, not in the womb, not in the cradle, not in your mother's arms. If this commission is serious about reconciliation, then it must begin by acknowledging the full scope of the truth, that the United States lynched black children, erased their humanity in life and death. The press didn't just report the lynchings, it inflamed them, legitimized them, and then buried them. That trauma wasn't only physical, it was emotional, spiritual, communal, and intergenerational. So I asked this commission, say their names. Say the names we know, search for the names we don't. Tell the stories of the babies, the toddlers, the sons and daughters who never got to grow up. Honor the pain of the parents, the siblings, and the communities who buried them under fear and silence. And to make amends, we must abandon the myth that lynching is a relic of the past. The rope may be gone, but the logic of lynching is still with us. In police shootings, in the demonization of black children, in the demonization of black protests, in the continued presumption of black guilt. The tools have changed, but the belief that black life is disposable has not. The legacy of lynching lives on in our bodies and in our institutions. It's in the fear black parents carry when their children leave the house. It's in the school-to-prison pipeline. It's in the press coverage that still paints our children as more dangerous, less worthy of empathy. It's in the silence of textbooks. It's in the unmarked graves. To make amends, we must name what happened. We must teach the truth in our schools, not the sanitized versions. We must let the horror be the guide. We need to teach the raw and devastating reality. We must memorialize every child, every name, every community shattered by racial terror. We must compensate those descendants who carry the intergenerational pain in their cells, their memories, their missing family trees. Prevention begins with accountability, and that means eliminating qualified immunity. It means real consequences for racial violence by police. It means journalists interrogating the language they use when covering black death, not defaulting to officer-involved shooting or suspect fled, but asking whose story is being told, who is being dehumanized, who gets to be innocent. And for the media, which played a central role in shaping public acceptance of racial violence, the work of repair must begin with truth-telling and institutional atonement. Media organizations must publicly acknowledge their role in glorifying lynching, erasing victims, and vilifying black communities. They must open their archives and digitize every article, every editorial, every image that help normalize racial terror, because truth without transparency is just another form of silence. They must retrain journalists, not just in diversity and inclusion, but in history, in trauma literacy, in the ethics of coverage. They must end the practice of extracting stories from black pain without context or accountability. Journalism must stop being a spectator sport for black suffering. The media must also examine white criminality like never before, not just as the individual acts, but the systems, the historical patterns, the cultural roots. The media must stop treating white racial violence as exceptional, as irrational, or out of character. It's not new, it's not rare, it's a family heirloom, it's intergenerational, it's epigenetic, it's in white people's bodies and cells. It is part of an unbroken legacy of racial domination that has gone unnamed and unexamined for too long. And finally, the media must commit to never again being an accomplice. That means stopping the rush to publish police narratives. It means diversifying newsrooms at every level of power. It means elevating black storytellers who understand what is at stake. And it means refusing to turn black death into spectacle. Thank you.